A Lenawee County woman is dead tonight, and a man is still recovering after a shooting in Saline that police are calling a domestic incident. Police say 40-year-old Amber Thomas was with a man in a parking lot across from an assisted living facility in Saline when her ex-boyfriend walked up and started shooting.
Thomas was brought to U of M hospital where she later died. The 55-year-old man she was with is recovering, and at last check, he was in stable condition. Police took the 58-year-old shooter into custody after he crashed while trying to flee the scene.
Now, according to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in the U.S. are victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by a partner in their lifetimes.
Here with more on the resources that are available to victims of domestic abuse is Dr. Sharman Davenport, President and CEO of the nonprofit Turning Point. Dr. Davenport, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So we just heard that statistic. That sounds crazy on its face. Can you put that into context for us? Just how common is domestic violence?
Well, as you saw by that statistic, it is very common, and I think it's really important that we increase the awareness around domestic violence, helping people to understand the pervasiveness and the real dangers associated with it.
Yeah.
I think when you look at this case that we just described, this is obviously to the extreme, but what are some even smaller forms of domestic violence, just basic ones that people say, well, it's just, let's say someone's having a bad day, but what is the basics?
So there are a lot of signs of domestic violence, but commonly the biggest thing I think is that it's about power and control, right? The perpetrator is really trying to control his partner or her partner and using very divisive methods to do it. They may just be belittling, they may be checking up on you all of the time. It could be that they're pushing, hitting, just really different ways to control the other person's behavior. But I think that it's really important that somehow people need to start to understand when we've gone from, let's say, level 1 of some domestic violence and you're starting to go into a more lethal situation. Because I think that's the part that really gets missed, that people don't really understand those signs.
So what do you do if you find yourself in a situation, you're either noticing the red flags or it's full-fledged at this point, or you know someone who is in this situation? What do you do?
Well, I think it's important that you reach out to a domestic violence hotline. They will help you to work through, any of your thoughts and plans about your situation. They'll help you identify how lethal a situation that you are in. There are a lot of signs that would indicate to someone that you're talking to on a hotline that your situation has gone to another level. Maybe the frequency or the severity of the abuse has increased. If there's been any attempt at strangulation, then you know that you're in a lethal situation. If you have talked about leaving the relationship or you have left the relationship, then the level of violence is most likely going to escalate, and this is the time that we often see it result in a murder. All right, is when the person has left the situation and the perpetrator is feeling like they don't have a means of controlling them anymore. Mm. But if you call a hotline, you can discuss, the signs that you're currently seeing, and they will help you put a safety plan in place. They can help you come up with some ideas to try to get yourself to safety, or even recommend that you come into a shelter so that you can leave that situation immediately.
What's your advice to someone that's perhaps in a situation where they say, I have kids, I can't leave. Financially, we have nowhere to go, or we can't afford to pay our bills if we don't stay in this situation. That can be obviously a difficult situation to make. What would you say to someone in that scenario?
What I would say is you need to assess the dangers that you're in, because even though you have your children, and most people don't want to uproot their kids, right? But what are they looking at? What are they seeing? What are they observing? And what is the risk to your life or to theirs? Sometimes in domestic violence situations, the children also get hurt, or the person, the perpetrator might kill the pet. There are a lot of different things that could go wrong if you allow yourself to stay in a situation that is continuing to progress. Right? You may think, okay, I can handle this. It's not too bad for the children. They don't really see it. But you need to be tracking how bad is it getting. Is it more severe? Is it more frequent? In that case, then the danger level is increasing. The lethality level is increasing. And anytime anyone puts their hands around your neck, in an attempt to strangle you, even if it's just for a minute. Well, not a minute, you'd be dead, but even if it's for a short period of time, that means that the lethality has increased by more than 700 times, right? And the next time might be the last time. And so people need to assess, what should I do? What's better situation for my children? Being in this volatile situation, which may end up in somebody getting hurt, or leaving. And if you call a shelter, like Turning Point, we do provide, so we have a shelter, then we also have housing. So we have a transitional housing which will allow survivors to stay for up to 2 years with their children while they work on getting on their feet. They can further their education, job training, do the things that they need to do so that they can leave and feel safe and independent after those 2 years.
And thank you so much for joining us today. As we wrap up, what is the website for Turning Point? What is the way to contact?
So if they would like to call our hotline, which I think is the most important way to reach us, they should call 586-463-6990.
All right, Dr. Sharman Davenport, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.